Hello and welcome back to Taking Back Saturday, a Happy Buyers Club podcast where we break down the real estate market each and every Friday to help home buyers build confidence, follow a process and hopefully buy really happy. Joining me today from McGrath Wilston is Cayle Blaxland, who's best known for selling his fair share of prestige blue chip inner north real estate whilst remaining a prestige blue chip bloke. Cayle.
Wearing a blue shirt.
Cayle, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you very much for having me.
Mate, what inspired you to get into real estate? And what keeps you passionate about it to this day?
The big one first.
You are passionate about it, right?
I am. I think probably more than people probably think. Similarly to you, I was an electrician for a long time.
Oh, I thought you meant about liking our jobs.
So I was a sparky for 5-6 years. Did that throughout school. Was a qualified tradesman at 18. And then was like, I don't want to crawl through roofs anymore. Like, this sucks.
Itchy up here.
Yeah. It's itchy, hot, and pretty uncomfortable. And I'm not getting paid very well to do it. Despite having a healthy respect for the trade and everything, I went traveling for a little bit, came back, and I was like, what the hell am I going to do? And it was like on parents' couch for like 6 months, and they're like, hey, probably time that you do something. And then I started working at McGrath Paddington, which was like the HQ of Queensland, and I was their receptionist for 7 months. So like ran the front of office, took care of a little bit of property management stuff, did contracts, and ran training events at the upstairs sort of training room.
And kept everyone's business cards in a nice little stack at the
quite
front.
Literally, and sort of rubbed shoulders with some huge heavy hitters, one of which is, Nathan Jankovic and Alex Jordan, which are, Queensland's biggest and best agents, not only just within McGrath, but also throughout the state and Australia. So had some really awesome relationships, literally went from being a tradesman, like running a job site and more on the domestic sort of side of things, than to like literally being in a nice sort of presentable business shirt and like welcoming people at the front of like a high-end real estate agency in the middle of Brisbane CBD.
You can tell that the transition for me was a little bit lighter because I've gone from crawling under houses, looking terrible, to now just wearing the shirt. The button-up's too much for me. It's too big a transition.
The problem is like, how do you decide what you want to do at a time that you realistically have zero insight or life experience to make that bit of a call? So I sort of had some friends and like observed some people that I felt were relatable on Instagram and Facebook who I'd reached out to at the time just to sort of explore that avenue. And then like everyone just sort of like took the punt, went with it, and then went from being out of a real estate reception role into being like a co-agent. And then pretty much from there, like now still work with a person who I was sort of somewhat as a bit of a cadet for a long time. And now we're business partners in parallel.
Was there anything that you sort of drew from your time as an electrician that has served you well as a real estate agent?
Yeah, look, I think everyone knows there's that stereotypical cringeworthy agent or real estate professional that everyone's like, wow, they're so scripted and slick and ferally to deal with, right? Let's be honest. And like you come from being a tradesperson where you're pretty trusted, fairly reliable, maybe more on the larrikin side as a part of like a business professional, but with that comes the relatability, right? And you don't take yourself very seriously, but what you take seriously is your job.
100%.
So like that particular sort of relationship was actually, I think, probably the best thing that helped me break through with people is that like my ability to have a laugh with them and then be like, cool, like, do you want to buy this place or not?
It's like, hey, I'm wearing socks. I'm not the real estate agent that you're thinking of. Yeah. I mean, I remember, throughout my time as a plumber, I was doing a lot of maintenance work. So you'd be knocking on a lot of doors.
Me too.
Being like, hey, it's 5:30 in the morning. How are you? I'm Chayse. Do you mind if I run a lead out from your place here? This is what we're going to do today. This is what you can expect from me. And then I'll show you a couple of things along the way.
Yeah.
And just that little bit of comms, which my boss at the time taught me, was like, hey, if you tell them what to expect from you, and will then show them what you've done at the end, you're going to be 1,000 steps ahead of everyone else, and they'll leave you alone.
Delivering on what you say you're going to do.
Well, they also won't stand over you, watching you all morning, being like,
which every
what are you
single
doing there?
person, like domestic wise, they probably don't really want to. You're probably there, and they don't really want to pay you to do it. So it's like, hey, this is why we're doing this. And if you find a fault, and be like, hey, this happened because of this, this, and this. Can you just have a look at this so you can understand where I'm coming from on it? It's probably your first exposure to actually being client facing.
Yeah, customer service,
talking someone through the problem that you just identified at their property and you're about to charge them
For sure. Well, you also charge them, $90 to knock on the door, so that
100%.
that you're already starting $90 behind the 8 ball in their mind.
And someone's like, "What do you mean, like $100 to show up?" It's like, yeah, but I've also driven 30 minutes to be here. I've got to go and get tools and supplies and visit, whatever particular electrical wholesaler to make sure I've got those things on board. I'm carrying the cost of that without you knowing that you're going to need it.
This is not a charity, baby.
Yeah. Like, I'm not here as your friend as much as what people try and take advantage.
Why do you think real estate agents in general get a bad rap?
Bad communication.
Yeah, so it boils back to the same thing, right?
Yeah,
It's that
100%. Plus also, like, people, I should say, sorry, some agents I feel like play the game too much. Where sometimes people are like even over the weekend, like we had 3 different scenarios, 3 different sets of personalities of buyers who wanted to buy the place. And I'd said the exact same thing to every single one of them. One person listened to it.
And guess what?
And they bought it.
They buy it.
Yeah. And this is the thing. I think people get burned very, very easily, but then they just assume that everyone's the same. So that when they get communication, they almost don't believe it. Because they're like, oh, okay, this sounds like a story. It's like, hey, it's not. Like, this is the scenario. We're selling prior to auction. Are you in or you're out?
Like, Slick McGee told me that 2 weeks ago, and I got burnt by it.
Yeah, and then I ended up bidding 2 weeks later on it.
Yeah.
So, like, I think it's generally just people's inability to probably read the character of the person opposite them.
Yeah, and that's like, mate, some people, like a low bar of entry, no offense to people getting into real estate. Here 100%. We are, both of us.
Yeah.
Thank God. But, like, they are often fed the lines, being like, read these and just have your soundboard ready to go and just punch them back to people. Be like, yep, that's a A1, beep. Just off they say that same thing over and over again.
You touched on it earlier. Like, some particular agents and agencies are just trained for like scripts and dialogues, which is great to a certain extent, but you need to be able to make them your own and actually have it from a genuine place rather than being like, this person said this, did A, B or C, I'm going to respond with C that I learned in Josh Friedman last week.
You can hear them flicking through the paper, like just trying to find the right page of the script.
And you can hear this person on the other end of the call and they're like, oh, they're actually looking at a script right now. Oh my God.
It's too big a pause. Sellers get to be pretty choosy with their agent of choice when they are selling. Can you be, and are you choosy with who and what you're selling?
I try to be a little bit more these days. Like, you've always got to make a bit of like a commercial decision at the time and like how much stock you're holding or what's your pipeline looking over the next sort of 3 to 4 months. But typically I'm probably the most selective, I think, within our office around what type of stock that I chase. If I'm going to go and invest energy to try and be in someone's life that they don't realize I'm going to be, I will make sure it's commercially worthwhile, but also like a particular property that like I'm going to be excited to sell.
For sure.
Because like when I'm excited to sell something, like you will not beat me on passion.
Yeah, love that.
Whereas like, for example, if I get a call up for such and such, I'm like, I just know that it's not going to be something that I'm going to be really enthralled to wake up at 5 a.m. and be pumped for.
Can you be that transparent with a potential client and be like, this is not going to get me that excited?
No, this is genuinely what I will say. With people that I'm referred to or people that get called in or emails, whatever it be, I'm not the specialist in that field.
Yeah.
But I know who is. And if I was going to sell my property, I wouldn't do it myself. I'd actually ask that person to do it because they're handling those buyers every single day. I'm just in a bit of a different field. Like, I'm just over here dealing with a different type of buyer.
And here's hoping that they still get a fantastic experience, a fantastic result from that agent that you referred them to, and it will still reflect well on you. And you'll probably get the call the next time as well when they're selling something in the inner north that's, flash as.
And like, I just want to be real with people, like I don't want to be, and because there's so much that goes into being like an agent, it's not necessarily just sort of representing them in a sales negotiation. It's also like being their therapist. Like over the weekend, like I had that exact same thing. Like I had sellers who literally cried on my shoulder and like I was there to console them and also try and run an open home at the same time, right? So like you need to try and be a chameleon, but realistically I think like you need to specialize in an area or you need to specialize in a niche.
Yep.
And I think if you're trying to be one of the both, which has been something that I've struggled with a lot, like you'll be nothing to no one rather than everything to someone.
Yep. Awesome. Oh, deep cuts, that one. Okay. We're in a listing presentation or we've got the Form 6 signed and we're talking method of sale. How do you decide what's best for a campaign?
Firstly, it's probably brought back to timing. Like if it's going in the market the next 2 weeks or the next 2 to 4 weeks, I'm going to be able to give them a really solid understanding with how well auctions are performing at the moment, what's clearing, what prices are actually being achieved at auction. I saw something sell on the weekend for probably like $200,000 lower than what I thought it should sell for. Just because it sold at auction and it cleared didn't mean it was a good result.
Yep.
So selfishly, as an agent, I'm going to say, well, look, you can sell through an auction, but if I was going to be selling it and I want to get the highest price possible, and that's one of my top 2 priorities, I'm not going to do that. Or if I am going to run an auction process, I'm going to really make a robust sort of background to why this property is worth what it's worth. As opposed to if I'm going to be saying, hey, listen, right now I've noticed that the top 10 highest sale prices in our area, call it Grange, for example, have all actually sold post-auction or haven't sold at auction at all, and it's been like maybe something sold prior. That actually is an indication to me that we should be selling with a private treaty or a lack of transparency for buyers, because you need to try and make sure that you're justifying value properly and you're not just getting people to a certain level at auction and then just taking it offline from there. Because if that's going to be the case, you could have done that in week 1 or 2.
Yeah, exactly.
And you're probably meeting and talking to the same people anyway.
Yeah.
So I think it comes back to, well, how much justification is behind that seller's expectation on price point? What's the market sentiment behind competing at that level? And how many people are you probably expecting to get an offer from at that level? If it's 1 or 2 people, you got to private treaty that thing. If it's 5 plus, there's probably a fairly solid argument to a auction, or maybe as an alternative like an EOI buy.
Yeah, because give them a time frame we're working towards.
But
get everyone really excited,
both.
really emotional in a 2-week period.
Yeah.
And then put them all into battle.
In an ideal world, I would love every campaign to run for 3 weeks, giving people 6 to 8 opportunities to look at a property. That's enough time for most people to do what type of DD they want to do. Plus, also by the time that we've actually sent communication that property's coming to market the week before, it really is a 4-week to 5-week campaign anyway.
Yeah. All on that, what do you think of off-market or pre-market properties?
Love-hate relationship with them. I love that we take such a huge deep dive with our buyers when properties don't suit them and understand exactly what they're looking for. So when we're going up against another agent, we have such a beautiful acumen around exactly what our buyers and the best buyers in that market are looking for. So that works, but it depends probably on the market sentiment at the time around whether a buyer is going to be comfortable to spend that money that an owner wants in a pre-market environment versus being online. Because the amount of people that I've had come through an off-market property that were the perfect buyer for it, but for whatever reason, we're like, oh, we're just going to sit in our hands.
Yeah.
And it's like, dude, like, this is exactly what you described to me 2 weeks ago.
It's funny how like buyers and sellers both have that similar sentiment about pre-market or off-market properties. Like they need to know that other people want it as well.
Yeah.
And it's, again, for a lot of our clients, potential clients, like that's often the big draw card of using a buyer's agent. Is like, we want access to pre-market properties, we want access to off-market stuff. You know, for like, put yourself in the seller's shoes. They're not going to let you steal it. Like you are going through with a predetermined expectation or price guiding on that property. It's up to us to then determine where we see value and try and see if those two can be married up.
Yep.
But for some unrepresented buyers who might get those opportunities to go through there, they're like, I don't know, maybe it's because I'm the only one here and I'm privately looking at this thing and I've been told what the expectations are.
Why does it feel different?
Yeah, like, and then all of a sudden it's on the market a week later and they're finding themselves, bidding against 4 other parties. And they probably will pay the same price.
Yeah.
Realistically, the price will eventually find itself, I think, around the same point.
Buyers are sort of almost used to like that fear of seeing other people there that are probably just like them. So when that it's in an instance when it's not there, people immediately assume or are doubtful around what's going on. Why am I the only person here? Do I actually have a very good relationship with Cayle, or is like there no one else that's interested in this property?
No. When in reality, you've been given an opportunity as potentially the best buyer in the market to come through away from the competition, pay fair money, the right money, maybe even a premium on fair.
Probably, yeah.
To get that property away from the competition. What you are ensuring though is that you are buying a suitable property for you.
Yep.
Yeah. And that is the leg up that you've been given. You're not being given a ticket for a freebie. You don't get a discount on the property.
It's not a deal.
You're getting access to a property that is truly suitable to you based on the feedback that you provided to an agent in the past. And now you're here. Here's the expectation. Let's start a negotiation. It's not a case of, hey, pre-market's cheap market.
But if I was a buyer and I see lots of properties, probably 5 times as many properties as what the average punter would. And someone called me and I was using a buyer's agent. I really wanted to find 810 square metre block with a city view. And someone's like, hey, here's one. And I'm like, I know it's off market. I'm like, I would pay the premium on that. It's going to get there anyway. Or it'll probably even maybe go over what I'm, wanting to spend on it. like me paying the premium right now in a year's time is an amazing deal.
For sure. And it's de-risking the likelihood that another party is going to enter the picture when it's on market and just have, deeper pockets than you, or just pay beyond where you can either afford or see value. And you're like, rats, I wish I'd known about that 2 weeks before it came on market.
But like, how's this? It's also like the pre-market and off-market conversation with a buyer, or even, for example, sometimes with a seller, is like, well, there might be 100 different people in a market to buy between $1.8 and $2.2 million in my area at any given point in time. But maybe for that weekend or 2 weeks, there's maybe only 30 or 40% of them that are available. Some people got school sport on. Some people just had their pre-approval lapse. Someone's mum just died. Whatever it could possibly be. The amount of times that I'd send a property to someone that's like perfectly suited for them, off market or pre-market, and I've sat at the listing table and been like, I've got 5 people that genuinely have told me that this particular
Look at this guy.
and I've got their names and I've got everything there. And then you try and give them a call or text, and like they're like, oh, like I'll think about it, and you'll never hear from them. And you're like, what's going on?
Yeah.
But like, sometimes people just aren't available, or they don't have the bandwidth at the time. Like they could be getting smashed at work, or someone could have just lost their job. So sometimes who you were bidding against last weekend may not be there next weekend.
Yeah,
Or they could have bought something else.
And doesn't that speak to consistency? This is a podcast for buyers for the most part, obviously, and some sellers as well. Sometimes the same. But realistically, it's about being consistent. And if you can, I know it's hard, things do happen, but if you fall off the face of the planet, you might not get another call.
Yeah.
Which is a tough reality to sometimes swallow.
That's true. 100% true.
Mate, how would you describe your negotiation style?
In an auction context, like if it's going to be like an on the floor or something like that, I will always set with my sellers what I feel like is a very justified reserve. It'll probably be on the higher end because at the end of the day, like that's what they've sort of employed me for. But also, I feel like I've probably set it at a level that's probably been benchmarked by probably at least 1 or 2 other properties. So it's not just something that's plucked out of thin air. In a private treaty negotiation, I would say very, very structured, and the rationale that we have behind it is robust. So I've discussed strategy at length. So if I'm just coming back to a buyer and it's a one-on-one negotiation, and it's going to be a bit of an arm wrestle, it's probably more so around, this is what we want and why. And if you don't agree with it, that's totally fine.
Well, you also probably have to, and you're probably asking them for the same.
Yes.
What do you want to pay and why?
Yeah.
Justify it for me so that maybe we can learn something. Maybe we can come to an agreement. Maybe we can bridge this gap.
Yeah.
But,
And so, like, for example, I always say to a buyer, if we've got a price guide on a property that chances are me and the sellers have had a pretty lengthy conversation about, and it's 1.5 to 1.6. If you're offering me 1.5, I will say to you before you let me submit that offer, are you sure that's the first impression that you want to make with the sellers who just price their property to give you the extreme amount of transparency? Do you really want to come in at a level, possibly as the first buyer, at the bare minimum or lower? If you do, I'm cool with that. But expect a response at the complete end of the scale.
Yep.
If you make me an offer of 1.5, I'm going to give you a countersign at 1.6. I would recommend you come in at a level that's probably going to be a little bit more respectful and actually pay it forward a little bit, because it will come back with a dividend. They may still countersign you towards the top end of that guide, but if someone else is diddle-daddling around and they haven't offered yet, they're probably going to come back to you and be like, well, we want to do a deal and this is where we want to do it. We'll leave this open for another day or so, and if you don't want to take the deal, that's fine, but there may be someone else that gets involved at that point.
It sounds to me that you are very well prepared at all times. It sounds like you're very calm because you have done the preparation. When you know your stuff, when you're coming from a place where everything has been pre-strategized, pre-worked through, you're just executing on what your negotiation process should look like every single time.
So, this is one thing that I feel like we do that a lot of other agents in our area aren't bothered to do, which blows my mind. Say we are offers over $2 million, which happens a fair bit of a psychological threshold, the 2 million mark. I'm giving every single person an area sales list that really goes anywhere from 1.8 to 2.5 million, which is a big guide. But what I'm then doing is going and putting the land value for every single one of those comparables and benchmark it against ours. I'm also mentioning this particular one was in an overland flow path. This particular one was actually backing onto Days Road and Grange, which was really busy. This one was west facing. So I'm literally going and
putting the context
and
for each of
giving
those
everyone
sales.
the context. I'm saying, hey, go do your research. I guarantee you it's not going to be as good as this.
Yeah, well, that's, we do similar things for our buyers as well, where it's, there's a reason why there's a comments section when you build out a CMA. It's because every one of those does require context.
100%.
Whether it's days on market, that took 3.5 months to sell that. This one backs onto a main road, whatever it may be. And then bringing that all together to work out, okay, what does fair look like? What's a premium here, and where are we willing to walk away? And having that information, the context, and being able to recall it in a negotiation is extremely important for 100%. Both you as a selling agent and me as a buyer's agent. Yeah. So, for your average punter out there, the extra research does help, because if you can speak confidently to it, it's going to hold you in a lot better stead, and you're not going to get bullied by guys like Cayle Blaxland to pay the 1.6.
It's going to happen anyway. But look, the reality is, like, I will give people an opportunity cost. And whether that's, if it's later on in the stage of the campaign and it really is probably like a one-on-one buyer, there's only so much value that we can add. And you really are drawing off, unfortunately, a lot of like the performance of like your industry colleagues around what their sales are achieving, and what, if it was an auction or if it was being in the market for literally 200 days and they've had 3 price reductions. It's like, unfortunately, that person's going to go and be like, well, this one sold for that. It's like, well,
one mercy of their
one property doesn't make a market, right? But it's still pretty relevant. Yeah. So I think at the end of the day, it comes back to trying to treat people with, if you're getting the sale timeline really within a 14 to maybe 20-day time frame, you've got pretty good leverage.
Yeah, nice. What role do you think social media and technology plays in today's real estate market? And how are you leveraging that?
So, look, we have an affiliate who help us with a lot of our digital marketing beyond realestate.com. I'm always a pretty firm believer, if I'm going to sell my property, for the most part, it's probably going to be tax-free for a lot of those principal place of residence owners. You got to like do everything you can to like avoid paying as much tax as you can, right? I'm like that. So why would you not, for that maybe 1 to 4 week process, not maximize the amount of people who know your place is on the market? I get the privacy things, I fully understand. However, if you've got the ability to reach even 10% more people and there's one extra buyer in there, like I've seen someone come from social media and be the underbidder of an auction, albeit didn't buy it, they would have easily added an extra 10% of value to that property.
So they pushed the eventual buyer up.
Yeah. And you're not necessarily looking for the active buyer, but you're looking for the circle of influence of someone who may be looking to transact real estate. And the amount of people who will go and tag a spouse or a friend in like the Facebook comments, or they'll share it with their boyfriend, whatever it is, like it's probably something that's very hard to tangibly see the return on investment on, but at least you can see how many people are seeing it. You can categorize them into what age group they are. You can specifically target an area where you think that your buyer is probably going to come from off the back of realestate.com and domain data, whatever that looks like. And then you can go one step further and, sponsor your ad to hit the people that are, interested in like the Nudgy College page.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
That's pretty wild. So like if you actually have a very close understanding of who your buyer probably is of this property, because you're an expert in your area.
Let's go find their eyeballs.
Let's play the odds. Like, I'm a betting man. Like, let's go and find all the people that could be a buyer and just shower them a little bit with content. They might not be the buyer, or they may not send it, like they may send it to someone else. But you aren't always looking for your buyer, but you're looking for the people who may know it. Or know them, I should say.
It's not like the old newspaper ad. This is hyper. This is like the most specific newspaper in the world.
And the reality is the cost per engagement is very little. Like if the average realestate.com listing fee is around $3,300 in our area. If we went and spent that exact same amount of money on a social media sponsored ad for Instagram and Facebook, I think the factors of multiple would be like 15 to the amount of people who are seeing the property for sale versus realestate.com, which is maybe somewhere between 4,000 and 8,000 page views.
If for anyone out there that thinks, wow, it's so weird how I just keep seeing the most relevant things,
it's
ads.
not by chance.
This is not by chance.
But the weird thing is that like I never see them. Like I see a little bit, but I think because my page is so like aligned with real estate that like it just sort of knows that I'm an agent.
Yeah.
As opposed to like the
Like this is lost on you.
Yeah, 100%. But like it's wild. Like some of our videos, for example, and some of our content have reached over 100,000 people. You wouldn't be able to do that with the amount of letterbox drops, with the amount of realestate.com pushes, the amount of email blasts. You don't have that much people that you can reach out to.
Yeah, it's wild. It's wild the avalanche that can happen with shares and stuff.
It doesn't seem legal to me. So I'm like, this is only going to happen for
some people would probably agree with you.
Yeah, the amount of people are like, why am I seeing this stuff? It's like, because you're a consumer.
Nice one. Hey, a couple of questions for the buyers, because this is a buyers podcast. What is the most common mistake that you see buyers make? And how can they avoid them? Going head to head with you in a negotiation, by the sounds of it.
I think sometimes ruling a property out without actually going and viewing it. I can probably appreciate that they're getting spammed by good quality agents who are trying to get them to their listings. But if a property is within their price range and they have a reasonably free Saturday between 9 and 2 p.m, they should be going and researching other properties that they don't even think they may buy. Yep. There could be 50 buyers at that particular listing. They're like, oh, wow, this place is a lot busier than I would have thought it would have been. And if they see that place sell for 1.7 and they're like, oh, geez, we only have 1.7 to buy with, and we didn't even like that property. It instantly is going to be like recalibrating their thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, it's all market research, right? Isn't it? Yeah, that's the thing.
But that's why you like naturally people work with the buyer's agent to alleviate their time, but also to make their time the most productive and financially productive it can be, in my opinion.
Definitely.
Like I would employ a buyer's agent to help me buy if I actually felt like I didn't understand the market as good as what I could, and also to get opportunities that they might even be online or might be open to the public, but I may not have considered, or I may not have looked in that suburb without them politely pushing me to do it.
And
I did it. I went and bought in a suburb that I've never even paid any attention to. So I'm the prime example of it.
Love it. Love a little left field.
Literally, 100%.
And speaking of, like, what are the most important factors people should consider when choosing a neighbourhood? I guess this is dependent on buyers and where people are in their lives, but, you know.
Look, I'm a really big believer about like you need to feel like every single day when you wake up in an environment that makes you happy. And sometimes that could be at the top of your budget, which you didn't want to do. However, you need to be able to consider on like a neighborhood or a suburb basis, well, what do the growth prospects look like? You know, what are the schools like? What are the school catchments like? How far away are you from the tunnels? I go surfing every month. Yeah,
so what's my commute going to look like to do that? Am I still going to enjoy that surf knowing that I'm up for an hour and 15 both ways?
Yeah, and like I get up every single morning early, go to the gym. One of the main factors for me was how far away am I going to be from the gym? Which sounds really petty.
Doesn't it?
Yeah, but like, you know what? That makes me happy every single day.
Sure.
And that was a big factor for me. So I was like, okay, this is going to take me an extra 10 minutes to get to the gym in the morning. But I'm like, I can probably do a few more podcasts, a couple more songs, whatever that looks like. But realistically, you need to be able to look in an area and be open-minded, because if you can't afford Wilston, Grange or Gordon Park may be a fantastic alternative with an extra minute of commute for a bigger block in a location that may not even have as much ego attached to it or better neighbours.
And you've got that extra 10 minutes to listen to Taking Back Saturday.
Exactly, 100%. You can listen to more podcasts exactly like this. But like the reality is like you need to be open-minded, because sometimes you can't afford not to. And you may actually find the place that you could be happy for and in for 10, 15 years and not even known it. If you'd been stubborn enough to be just in one area, you're limiting yourself, and you're probably going to be spending a lot more money on that property when you do buy it, because you've spent so long looking only in a very confined criteria.
Yeah, tunnel vision.
Yeah.
Mate, I've kept you well beyond what I intended to, but we are going to finish with the most important question, and that is how are the Broncos going to fare in 2025?
Look, I feel like they really need to sort out their kinks. Reece Walsh is really frustrating me at the moment. Obviously,
he's a big fan of the show, so
yeah, I love him. But look, I think realistically, like there's some of like the small disciplines that they need to really narrow down on. I think Madge is actually. I was watching a couple of like the coach interviews post games. I'm like, wow, he's really got their backs. Like,
Oh, man.
he's building a culture where, like, not only they want to be high performers, but they actually want to be accountable and almost strangely patriotic first.
Mate,
Even if they lose. If they've showed up for each other and they put in a solid 80 minutes and they just didn't get there on the day, he's so proud of those guys,
he's
which speaks volumes.
He's done it at Souths, did it with New Zealand, he did it with the Blues, where he gets them in, pushes them to their absolute limits. He probably doesn't have a 3-year runway to keep pushing them like the way he is, but he's got the cattle, I think, in Hunt and Reynolds, and I think he's got Haas and Carrigan to sort of steer that pack. But, you know, the fringes, if he can lift the fringes, and if everyone can give like extra 10% for the Shibasakis, the Jesse Arthurs of the world, then there's every
really
chance.
Impressed with them. I've been like, oh, geez, Arthurs is really coming into his own. I feel like Staggs is probably going to like lift his game a little bit as well. Like he was really, really great for a long while there, and I feel like he's just been coasting for a little bit. So it's probably a bit of a good thing to see some of these understudies come in and take his place for a few weeks, so that fire in the belly is maybe ignited again.
For sure. And a quick reminder to Tony Staggs that he's the reason why we had to let go of Herbie Farnworth. And
100%, who's been pretty damn good, right?
So hot.
You know, yeah, and like every single time like he comes on the screen, like my missus is like...
We're not watching Dolphins games anymore.
Yeah, exactly. So exactly right. So like ultimately, I think they've actually got a really winning squad. Now it just comes back to discipline and executing the plan.
Love it. Speaking of discipline and executing the plan, any tips for buys this weekend?
I feel like it's really good buying at the moment. I'm calling this a very honest market. Like we're sort of in this bit of a space of time where like we haven't really probably experienced the full brunt of lowered interest rates, which are inevitable to be happening at some point this year, whether it be in May or in April or following. But I would be buying good quality property and paying what you need to right now, because in 6 months' time, I can see it being easily an extra 2 or 3%.
Awesome.
With probably more competition.
Get in while you can.
100%.
If the going
Always.
is good. Thank you so much, my friend. He's Cayle. I'm Chayse. Cue the song.
Thank you very much. Sounds good.